Hello, I'm Nick Leeming and this is the 6th in a series of Fettling videos for the Northumbrian Smallpipes. I'm going to show you a series of elementary problems and how they are caused, how to solve them. The first problem that you may have is you cannot inflate the bag. Now there's lots of reasons for that. The most simple is that you haven't got the bellows correctly positioned and your forearm is covering the bellows hole. So when you try and get air in, you don't. Or you're partially covering it, you don't get much air in. You'll hear that because the pipes will make a sucking noise as you cover the arm up. You may also perceive that either the bellows or the bag are leaking. You can tell this by inflating the bag, closing off your drones, covering the chanter holes, and see if the bag goes down. Now you may, if you try that, you may experience air going back into the bellows. If that's the case, then the valve, the clack valve in here at the end of the blowpipe is defective and you'll have to either adjust it or replace it. If it's in good working order, the pressure in the bag caused by your arm squeezing will cause that clack valve to slam shut and the air won't run back down to the bellows. If that happens, take that blowpipe out and replace the valve. Richard Butler's book tells you exactly how to do that. Another problem you may perceive is that the bellows don't fill with air. That can be caused by your arm covering the bellows hole if you're not holding the pipes right. It can also be caused by the clack valve being defective, and you can test that by simply taking it out and blowing through it. I'll show you how to do that. You quite simply disconnect and gently, using finger and thumb, take the clack valve out. You can see here, there's the clack valve, and you can simply suck air through it, or try to. If you can't suck air through it, the clack valve is good. If you can blow it like that, it works. One thing you may find, some bellows makers put in a tiny bit of wire The aim of this is to stop the clack valve from deforming, but it only allows it to open a small way. That can be a problem, and you can hear the air rushing in. You can easily remove it, it just pulls out. But it has a good function. Let me put the clack valve back. When you store the pipes, you should always store them so that the bellows are stored like that, so that the clack valve is laid flat on the seat of the valve itself. If you store them like this, that valve will hang loose and it will gradually curl up, and then it won't make a good seal. And you can take care of that when you put your pipes in their case to make sure that however you store them, the bellows end up like that. If you do that all the time, properly, you shouldn't need one of those little bits of metal on the clack valve. Sometimes the bellows and the pipes will part company, and there can be two reasons for that. Allow me to show you. The first one, the elementary one, is that the bellows pipe is not long enough, or you've put weight on. And there's a good way of checking that. If you take the pipes as if you're about to put them on, And if, when you look at them, the bellows pipe and the blowpipe meet like that, then they're probably about the right length. If they're like that, then obviously you need a longer bellows pipe. You can get, I recommend this silicone tubing, you can get it on eBay. Simply measure the diameter of the pipe that comes out of the bellows and get tubing that's either exactly that, if you've got a fluting on the bellows, or a millimetre less internal diameter. The second problem is if the binding on the blowpipe is not wide enough. And you can simply solve that by putting some more binding on. See the video on binding for that. It should be snug. It should never be as tight as the blowpipe in the stock, but it should be tight enough to not come apart when you're playing the pipes. If you're still getting leaks and you've checked the bellows clap valve, the joint between the bellows and the pipes, and the bag clap valve, one other place you could be losing air is through the sliding part. Sliding part has two weaknesses. The first is the piston that seals the drone, stops it from playing. If you can blow through that and nothing happens, it's not that. You can lose air from the tuning bead down the side if the cork lining it has shrunk. You can also lose air if the piston that closes the drone off is leaking. Again, you can take that to pieces and put new binding on the actual plunger. If it's your tuning bead, you can have it relined with cork, or as a temporary measure, you can coat it in beeswax and simply stop the air coming out. One other thing, if it is the tuning bead, air will always find the easiest way out. If you're actually playing your drones, you probably won't notice any losses coming out of the tuning bead. If you're not playing any drones, then the air will find a way out and it'll come out that way. If you've tried everything, clack valves, sliding parts, it may be that the bag itself or the bellows are leaking. Generally, leaks occur around the stitching at the edge of the bag or in the bellows, and you can help matters by putting some beeswax or dressing into the stitches, rubbing it in with your hands, putting proprietary waterproofing compounds, not sprays, wax compounds, onto the actual leather of the bellows and the bag. It may be that the stocks, where they're tied into the leather of the bag, they're leaking there, and you may need to get them re-tied in by a professional. You may even need a new bag if the leak is serious. But there's some little hints which might help you stave off getting a new bag or having your bellows re-leathered. You only need to do that in extreme circumstances. I mentioned in the introductory video that reeds need to be used frequently to keep them flexible. If you haven't played your pipes for a while, or if you haven't used one particular drone for a while and it doesn't work, here's a good trick. Simply remove the sliding parts from the pipes and leave the standing parts in position. Connect the pipes up. It's an awful noise, but they will generally work without the extra load of the sliding part on there. So just play them for 10 minutes, coax them with a little bit of air, and then give them a little bit more, and just keep that up for as long as you can stand it. A good 5 or 10 minutes, and that will get the reeds nicely exercised. You can also do the same with the chanter, but remember to hold it, don't let go, don't ever let it dangle. You do that, push the air through them for a good few minutes, and then try putting the sliding parts back on. Remember to open the valves, and this should work. One other thing, if you're not getting any noise out of your drones, make sure that the sliding part isn't blocked by blowing through it. You should get a whistle. You'll also be able to feel the extra resistance that the drone has to work against compared to playing it with just the standing part and the sliding part. If you're not getting air through it, then you've got a blockage in there and you need to take it to pieces. So have a look at the dismantling video. That'll tell you how to do that and put them back together again. A word on practicing. Reeds, especially cane chanter reeds and cane drone reeds, work because they are elastic in the dictionary sense of the word. When they are moved by air, they spring back. That's how they work. If you don't use them, they stiffen up. The fibres just become less elastic. So the best way of keeping reeds in good fettle is to play your pipes frequently and regularly. It makes you a better piper and it keeps your pipes in good condition. After all, you wouldn't expect your car to be in particularly good condition if you used it for 5 minutes once a month. And pipes are pretty complicated little machines in their own right. So practice. One problem you may have if your drones or your chanter isn't sounding quite right is you may have got a little bit of grease from inside the bag onto the reed, and it can take strange forms. I had a case, my own G set, very recently. I started playing it and one note was duff, and I could not work out why one particular note was duff. And when I looked at the reed, there was a tiny speck, a black speck of grease in the corner of the reed, and it was affecting it. So I cleaned it. I'll show you how to do that now. All you need is a piece of paper, normal photocopier paper or writing paper will do, and your trusty lighter fuel. Again, don't smoke. Put a couple of drops of the lighter fuel on the corner, and then you may need your magnifying glasses for this. Just introduce the corner between the blades of the reed and gently pull it out like that. That should dislodge any grease from the blades that are sticking them together. Just like that. The same you can do with a standard cane reed. You can just introduce your wet or moist paper between the blades, between the reed and the tongue of the reed and the body, and just withdraw it. And again, if there's muck and gunge in there, you can do it. It also works well with composite. I don't know why, but composites seem to pick up muck far more than cane ones. And again, it's just a question of gently putting your thumb on top of the tongue of the reed and withdrawing it. And you can actually see, I think, a little bit of muck that's come off that particular reed. Easily done. And then you quite simply put your reeds back in the pipes and hopefully they work. Thank you. Here's a nice little trick. This is a burley drone and the ferrule, this end bit, is held on with a combination of cotton and glue and it's quite firm. That's nice. This is a Hedworth drone. Mr. Hedworth made pipes in the 60s and 70s. Lovely pipes, beautiful pipes. He used to attach the ferrule by crimping the metal. You can see a groove in the ferrule and this was done on a lathe and it forces the metal to stick to the into the wood. The problem with them is that whereas it won't come off, it can rotate. I don't know how well you can see that rotating but trust me, it's rotating and it's a nuisance. And there's a way of doing this. I normally advise never using glue, but there is the odd occasion when you do need to do it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a tiny bit of super glue to the edge there. I'm going to suck it through. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that my valve's closed. Then I never want to apply the super glue directly to the piece because you've got no control. So what I do is I take my bottle of super glue, and remember, be very careful with super glue. It was invented by the Americans to actually stick human skin to human skin on the battlefield. So it's very useful for other things, but it's primarily to stick skin to skin, so you don't want your skin anywhere near it. So a drop or two of super glue on this bit of paper, top back on the super glue, put that to one side, and then use a cocktail stick, perfectly normal cocktail stick, get a drop of the super glue on the cocktail stick. You only need a very small drop, and then apply that to the edge of the, take it around. Now, because it's not sticking skin to skin, it actually takes quite a long time to set. Now what I'm going to do is, for the benefit of the camera, I'm going to lean forward, I'm going to suck the glue in and you will actually taste the cyanoacrylic vapour as it comes through. And then quickly I'm going to wipe that clear all the way around before the glue sets, and bingo. No sign. And once that glue goes off, you've got a nice tight drawn ferrule. Another problem you may encounter is the chanter coming loose out of the stock while you're playing. It's awful, it feels like a tooth coming out and it can be really dangerous. You want to avoid it because it can end up with the reed damaging. I'm not even going to attempt to demonstrate it on my own pipes because I don't want to damage my reed, but I'll use this one instead. Now, here we have a stock, an interchangeable stock, and a chanter I'm going to read in there. But basically what happens is that as it's played, it walks out. I'll do that again. You won't see this while you're playing because it'll be covered by the velvet of the bag, but it'll just walk out. And one day you'll cease playing. And the reason that happens is that the binding isn't tight enough. All right? In addition to it not being tight enough, it could be that it's only binding in one place. For example, if the person who's put the hemp on the tenon has done it unevenly such that there's too much around the middle, then exaggerating, it looks like that. Then if you think of the inside of the stock, it's only actually going to be binding at that one place and it will walk out. Exactly the same applies if they've done it too much at either of the ends. or if they've not put the binding on tight enough, and as the chanter has been put in and out of the stock, the loose hemp has been pushed downwards and ends up more of it down here, then it will only bind at the bottom. I put too much on, but it will gradually walk its way out because it's not binding at the top. It must be even all the way up the edge of the tenon so that it's nice and straight and it bites down the entire length of the stock. The same thing can happen with the tenons on the blowpipe stock and with the drones. So again, everything needs to be straight so it's a good snug fit in the sockets, and you should be all right. Finally, I'd like to thank everybody who's helped me with the fettling over the years, particularly Mike Nelson and Colin Ross. I'd also like to thank the people behind the camera, Katie and Graham Bark, my fellow musicians in Holtwhistle. They've been absolutely marvellous. So I hope you enjoy these videos. I hope you find them useful. Thank you.